us.
Beautiful.
Baptized and convert to the waves with us. I tuned into what the future holds. I can never be a slave, niggas. They gon' have to pay me. Navy downloaded by the titles like Jay-Z. That's a roll offshore like an AP Davey.
I mean, he's making an almost flexy hip hop track, but it's about a slave on a slave ship already. But I tuned into what the future holds. They're gonna have to pay me. Navy downloaded by the titles like Jay-Z and AP Davey Jones. Fucking hell.
Like I own top of those hoppers off the side of the ship. Suicide didn't die from the dip. Submarine man, keep your eyes on the blips. Sonar, echo location of where we are phasing. Get back to our nation. Hola. So we walking back to Africa, and I found a detour to the seashore. Yes, jumped off the deck to leave footsteps on the depths of the seafloor.
Bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, cause it bleach just like. So I'm going back home, I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet just like Jesus Christ. Wow, walking on water, wow, walking on water.
So it's like about the slaves who jumped off to basically be reborn into the ocean and walk back to Africa. Obviously they actually died. And now my bones is why the beach is white. The fucking layers of meaning just in that line alone.
Wow, walking on water, wow, walking on water. Hey, my bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, cause it bleach just like. So I'm going back home, I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet just like Jesus Christ. Walking on water, wow, walking on water, wow, walking on water. Hey.
Dive with us, vibe with us. Imbibe with the tide, see salty cause it cried with us. When we looked it in the eyes, like how could you help her? Poseidon apologized and said that I'm sorry with shelter. Y'all can live down here forever, drowning is severed from all your lungs and the lungs of your sons to your daughters. The water's a treasure. Some in the forest, talking the trees. Like how could you be in the chorus with something so horrid? You became boards for the floors and the doors of the warships. Anthropomorphic, the forest returned with a match made from itself and said burn us with that. Then left again and came back with that axe. We can serve you as furniture or furnace us blackie.
My bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, cause it bleach just like. So I'm going back home, I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water.
Well, mate, I mean, you know when you just hear something that's so utterly brilliant you can barely even react to it. And that's what I feel like I'm hearing now. Just the tone of it as well. So restrained and gentle. Yet the fucking imagery and exactly what he's saying, what he's talking about, and the world and concept that he's constructed within this idea of this sort of, you know, forgive me if I've got this wrong, of course. The idea of the only hope is to go and drown. It's crazy to say it. Go and drown in the, can get rebirth within the water, and then the whole concept about talking to trees, the fucking like comparison. I'm getting myself in a muddle. The comparison between the forest and the trees, and that's used to build the boats, but they were lined in the floor in the boats.
Feet just like Jesus Christ, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water. Hey, my bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, cause they bleach just like. So I'm going back home, I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet just like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, shipwreck with us. Grab vessels, bring them down to the depths with us. Take a hold of the bow with a Jesus and the Brigantine Sanderson and the Amistad and the Henry of London, Elizabeth, Fanny Butler and the Hector and the Greed, the Berto.
Okay, so at the end of Gold versus the Right Thing to Do, talked about you know, basically the slaves, or the long chains, as I think you call them, pulling down the ships into the depths, almost like, I mean, obviously, in reality, it's the water that did it, but in this concept of what he's conjuring, it's like the slaves that became one with the sea are pulling these ships down. Now he's talking about the show Shipwreck with us, talking about the Amistad, the Brigantine Sanderson, the Henry of London, all these slave ships, pulling them down. I mean, fucking hell. Just the concept to think of that is incredible. The way to put this into music, and it sounds listenable. You could listen to this and just kind of like vibe out to it without knowing what he was talking about. I think you'd be hard pressed to ignore what he was talking about, but I'm sure people have. But there's genius, and then there's genius, and then there's genius.
And the Martha, Lauren, and the Caroline, and the Brittany, and the Comet, Alabama, and the Wanderer, Henrietta Marie, the Molly, the Sloop, the Moloch, and the Bull Murte, and the River Volta, the Lord Board, the LSC, the Eagle, the Agent Coca, and the Colorado, Tartar Morgan, the Misa, the Pangas, and the Mary Bull, and the Serve, Winsberry, and the Liverpool, the Marquis O'Grady, the Inbus, the Ferrous, the Leons, the Navigator, and the Phoenix, Claytor, Mughal, Dragon, Grey Wave, Ruby, Caroline, Bark, and the Tanganin.
It just doesn't stop, which really hammers home how insane this was. Listen to all the names of these boats, some of them rivers as well. Talking some of the journeys, I guess, but
of Carrollton, Pinnis Swallow, Green Dragon, and the Charles, the A, the Moon Tapping and the Slant, Hannibal of London, Jeffrey, Littlefeet, Mediterranean, Anna Lee, the Solomon, and the Tyre, Cough, the Mercy, the Envy, the Little Napoleon, Rainbow, Enterprise, the Catherine, Bristol, the Columbia, the Anne, the Adelaide, Brooks, and the Law. Bones where the beach is white, where the beach is white.
yeah, I mean, mentioned Bristol there, which isn't necessarily the name of a ship, but you know, it's a town in England, if you weren't aware, but it's also it's a town basically built on the slave trade. And you may have seen in the news just recently where, about a year ago now, I guess it would be, blimey, what a year it's been, where the statue of the slaver was pulled down in the streets during the BLM first protests. Kind of such a powerful and evocative image, and nobody, well, not nobody, but many people, especially around the country, didn't know what that statue was, what it represented. And then the fact when we found out what that meant, what that statue was for, like, I'm not from Bristol, so I didn't know that statue existed, and then you found out how many other statues of slavers there are in this country just standing there. They need to come down.
It's just like so I'm going back home. I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet, just like Jesus Christ. Wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water. Hey, my bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, 'cause the beach just like so I'm going back home. I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet, just like Jesus Christ.
With us, from out the sevens to the heavens and the skies in us. Conversations with the constellations while you navigate the haters. Black baby alligator betas, supposed to do greater with all of your alphas and betas and minors and majors. You were so busy just trying to shine. You should have been trying to save us. Star said excuse our behavior. We will be indebted to you for all of eternity if you counseled your heart and forgave us. Remove all our favors from children to sailors and slaves.
Calling out the stars. I mean, I read this off Genius. I'm not this clever. The long chains here, in the concept of what this record is, are calling out the stars for guiding the slave ships.
Repay you with acres, but here in the heavens where harvest is greater, a meager inheritance, pardon our arrogance. Those with Americans got them two places much safer. Hey.
My bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, 'cause the beach just like so I'm going back home. I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet, just like Jesus Christ. Wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water, wow, wow, walking on water. Hey, my bones is where the beach is white, where the beach is white, 'cause the beach just like so I'm going back home. I took a leap last night, so I'm walking on water to my feet, just like Jesus Christ.
For you, for fire and map for you, star. Fall off the flat for you, should. 3 in the path for you, 6. All that I have for you, for fire and map for you, star. Fall off the flat for you, should. 3 in the path for you, 6. All that I have for you, for fire and map for you, star. Fall off the flat for you, should. 3 in the path for you, 6. All that I have for you, for fire and map for you, fast. Fall off the flat for you, sure. 3 in the path for you.
A rarefied masterpiece, even on first lesson. A 10. I mean, incomprehensibly brilliant, and yet eminently listenable as well. the gentleness of the tone, helping to hammer home the points rather than it being aggressive. Sometimes that slightly more measured approach makes things even more powerful. I think when you listen to something like that, if you're the type of person, and I almost know for sure that you're not, because you're watching this video, you're watching my channel, and you're on my Patreon, so you're not actually who I'm talking to. But if you've ever uttered the words "all lives matter" in opposition to Black Lives Matter, the movement, not necessarily the group, but the movement, the concept, the feeling, if you've ever uttered those words "all lives matter," the shocking and spectacular lack of empathy that you show for what is a collective trauma that we as white people, perfectly, I don't know, right thinking, correct thinking, nice, liberal, whatever you want to say, white people, a collective trauma, a collective ancestral trauma we can never, ever comprehend. We have to understand that you can never, no matter what, even what's happened to you in your own life, you can never comprehend that. We can't. But you listen to something like this, you get taught by someone like Lupe Fiasco. If you could still then utter those words, knowing what that actually means to say that, all lives matter, what it actually means to say that in opposition to something like this, the lack of empathy that would show with that knowledge in tow. People will say that because they're dumb as fuck. As far as I'm concerned, if you say that and you're dumb as fuck, I'm not interested in you, but at least I can write you off as an idiot. But if you could then say that after taking in all of this knowledge, the depth of this knowledge, listen to that verse. Listen to that verse that was just slave ships and a couple of like trade routes in cities and towns. How shocking it was to how many are in England. You know? I think in England often we see slavery as like an American thing because it was offshore here. The lack of empathy, the lack of humanity. What a track, man. We don't deserve Lupe Fiasco, man. The guy is unbelievable.